WYK news time right now is 8:37, and we welcome this morning State Senator. I've always introduced her before as Representative State Senator from the 31st Senatorial District. She is Dawn Keefer. Good morning, Dawn. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Gary. I'm doing well.
You always are full of vim and vigor, and I know, are you an Eagles fan, by the way?
I am a Steelers fan, but I always root for the Pennsylvania team, so I was excited. We watched the Super Bowl. We were very excited last night.
So if we're not going to get a Steelers team in there, we got to have an Eagles fan. There you go. And you were willing to...
Anybody but the Ravens.
Ouch. Oh.
Sorry, that's right.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, well... it's because I like you so much, I'm not even going to take you on that. It's not even worth it. But speaking of sports, by the way, I know a bill that you were very much on last year. President Trump last Wednesday signs an executive order banning transgender athletes from women's sports, directing the DOJ to enforce it. A day later, the NCAA comes along and said, hey, us too. And yet we have some places like California and some other places that aren't going to enforce this. Same old story. Talk a little bit about this. Your thoughts about, first of all, this executive order last week and some of the reactions since?
Well, let me just start with, it was not a ban of transgender in women's sports. It was a protection of women's sports, right? Yeah. So that's my frustration of this. His order is keeping men out of women's sports.
Right.
So that is what it does. Finally, someone is standing up for women. It was, I guess it's now been 52 years, right, since we got this Title IX.
Right.
And it was us fighting all those women before me that blazed those trails, that got us our own space to compete in sports on our own platform here. And now you have men, right? It's classic, turning themselves into female victims, claiming their rights have been denied as they participate in a full frontal assault against women's rights. I mean, you can't even make this up. So it was long past due. If transgenders, want to compete in sports, they have the opportunity. They can compete on their team now, or you know what? They can do the same thing women did: blaze your own trail and start your own league.
Right, and that's the idea here. That it's not keeping someone from participating, but you have to participate based on the sex you were assigned at birth. That's basically it. The NCAA, which had been kind of taking this sport by sport and saying, well, you could do this. We saw the case of Leah Thomas with University of Pennsylvania and the swimming records, and now there was a suit the day before this order came out last week, a suit the day before where 3 of her teammates were suing not only the Ivy League, but also Harvard, Penn, the NCAA, and saying, we got kind of left behind in this whole deal because of her coming in as a male and competing in a female sport. And we see a number of those kinds of cases across the country, Dawn.
You're right. But it's sad that it took this long to do, right? It's sad that they were all basically browbeat into submission. Don't say anything. You don't want to, be a people hater, right? And so you sit back. I kept saying, where are all my women livers, right? Why are they not standing up for our rights? This is not about sociology. It is biology. And I am born a woman, right? There's nothing I can do about that. And to say I have to compete against a man who has biological advantages out of the gate, especially once they hit and go through puberty, it makes no sense. Well, it is, again, like I said, it's biology. Yep. It is not sociology. No. And let's get back to reality.
It's just the way it is. I mean, we are made different. I hate to break this to anybody that didn't think that. But someone was arguing with me about this the other day, and I said, okay, I'm going to give you an example. Here's an example for you. Suppose Tiger Woods becomes Tigress Woods and decides to change and go over and compete in the LPGA tournament. Okay? And right now, as he is right now, he's one leg, he's older, he can't hit it as far, but he can still hit it over 300 yards. But suppose he decides to become a woman and compete there. How much howling do you think you would hear from the LPGA Tour when he wins? Because he's going to hit it further than anybody else, especially if they walk him up to the same tees they're playing from, which he does not play on now. So that was the point. And they said, well, I never thought about it that way. Well, I said, well, start thinking about it that way, because that's what you have. Men are stronger. But you know what? It doesn't make the women's sports any less important. Look at Caitlin Clark right now. Look at the interest that we've got the WNBA now and through around the country and women's basketball, women's track, women's sports, ice skating, all those kind of things. I don't want to see a man competing against a woman on an ice skating rink. It's just the way it is sometimes. It works that way, doesn't it?
Yes, and then not only that, they're breaking these records. And usually, right, when you get into track and swimming, you're breaking it by 1/100th of a second. They are flat out, like, destroying the records by 15 seconds.
Right.
Like, it's shocking how much, it just demonstrates, right, this is not right. And then they're going to steal all these titles and awards, everything from women. It makes no sense. It's an altered reality, and it has to stop.
Right. And the idea, as you said, be a trailblazer. If there's a lot of people who are transgender, you want to start a league and so forth, fine. I think the idea of we're going to say this is going to be normal to everybody and you're going to accept this, and because I decided to change my gender, you've got to accept me into that side of the sports. That's not the way it works. Everybody's rights has to be respected here. And we certainly respect the right of someone to do that. We respect them as a fellow human being. They have the same rights and privileges and everything, but you don't get to change the entire landscape just by a choice that you made, right?
Right, and you don't get to redefine what biology is, right? So in one of the PBS articles, it says, Trump, his administration's defining sex as, the gender you were born at birth, or that you, whatever you were born with at birth. I'm just reading that.
The assignment, yeah.
The science. You mean the scientific, right, definition, right? You have an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. There are those rare cases in where they might get skewed, right? But they are so rare. It's not what we're seeing right now. So, right, so you have an X chromosome, you play here, Y there. If sex did not matter, we would not have sex segregated sports in the first place. But we do, because we know there are just inherent advantages that you get with one gender or the other.
I remember a few years back, Annika Sorenstam, who won everything on the LPGA Tour and still is a very good golfer, was trying to compete on the men's tour. And she tried to make a number of tournaments, and people were getting all excited because she only missed the cut by one shot. Missing the cut. I mean, that's 67 players have missed the cut, and the rest have got to play. And so we're saying, okay, but on the women's tour, she's dominant. Okay, it's just the way it goes sometimes, and it's okay. I mean, it's not something bad. It's just, it's okay at the end of the day, but somehow we think, oh, my goodness, how can we possibly do this? Hey, I wanted to switch gears with you a little bit too, Dawn. You're in a brand new role now as a state senator in the 31st. We're watching this whole Doge mentality in D.C. with going in and trying to get the government to be more efficient, more accountable. I know you've talked about that for a long time. Can we bring that same kind of attitude to Harrisburg? What's your take on that as you look at this new role as a state senator?
I'll be honest with you, Gary, there is no will in Harrisburg to do this. I watch it play out every year, and I've watched all the agencies when my first year in, when I, scouring through all the special funds and all the slush fund that we spend. People started attacking me when I was shining lights on all of these special funds that sit outside of the general fund budget. Because they see them as their money, right? No, you can't touch these dollars, not these dollars. And it's not a partisan issue. Both sides love to spend. When I got here in Harrisburg in 2017, my first budget was under $32 billion. 8 years later, it is over $45 billion.
And we're asking for 55 this time around, right?
Yeah, it was 48. It was 48 billion. It was just shy of 48 billion this past year.
Right.
And the governor just proposed, it was almost $52 billion.
Okay, 52, yeah.
I mean, we've blown through. We had a surplus of $9 billion, blew through that. We had a rainy day fund. He's eviscerating that. And we have a structural deficit. And structural deficit, I know that term just for the audience, right? It's just saying we're spending more than we're getting in taxes. So that structural deficit, I believe they said, is now up close to $6 billion. So we're spending more money than we get in taxes. The rubber has to hit the road at some point in time. And so if they're not going to increase taxes, which they always say, oh, we haven't increased taxes for how long? No, but we have nickel and dimed you with fees out the wazoo. Look at your license fee. Look at your car registration fee. Look at elevator fees. And now they're going to, so now all of a sudden, the conservative Republicans are on skill games. We want to tax and regulate skill games.
Yeah.
As they say, oh, this is just about us trying to save the lottery fund. Well, they weren't worried about the lottery fund when they brought in gambling. So I'm sure there's some people that would be playing lottery that are gambling. So now it's just another revenue. It's another stream of revenue for them. So they're going to tax and regulate gambling. All of a sudden, you're going to see a lot of people that'll jump on the recreational marijuana, right? Because it's another funding stream. They're going to figure out all these sin taxes that they could possibly get in to cover their spending. And it is both sides. And so what the governor did with this is he cut all the legislative priorities, things that we really like, or special pet projects all the Republicans like, and then added another $3 billion on top of what he spent last year. And then what will happen right now, they're demanding transparency and accountability and all that. But in June, it'll be like, let's just get this done. And so, we had to raise more. It's the Overton window, and both sides will be complicit, and they'll tell you how it's a great budget and how we're investing. If I hear that term in government, makes my head want to explode. Government does not invest. Our only source of revenue, right, is taxing, right? We don't generate wealth. The people do.
I'm going to come back.
We don't invest.
Can you stick with it for one more segment here, Dawn? I'd like to come back and kind of finish that off, because I think that idea of investing is a word that we've kind of gotten sick of hearing. And if we want someone to invest, I'm not sure the government's the place I would go to get the investment done. But I want to talk a little bit more about that with you. Can you stick with it just for a few more moments?
Sure.
We're going to do that. Dawn Keefer, Senator Dawn Keefer from the 31st Senatorial District, with us here this morning. We'll come right back with more from her right after this. It is 8:48 on WOYK.